Okay, super excited about tonight's stream and have a special guest. What I think is probably one of the most important topics. A quick, succinct intro here is that basically, if you look at Enoch, as explained to you, kind of the prerequisite understanding or setting to getting into Genesis and the Genesis 6, you begin to realize that a lot of the stuff from the past maybe isn't as fictional or mythical as it was presented. And there seems to be a powerful group of people that kind of worship these entities. And we're kind of being conditioned to overlook them, simultaneously, potentially accept them. So anyway, so tonight's stream is about the Watchers and the Nephilim. I find it very interesting. So I reached out to the person I thought was the best to talk about it, and that is Sean Griffin from Kingdom and Context. What's up, brother?
Hey, brother, what's going on? 1 second. I've got to tell my audience to go to your channel because it's not multi-streaming properly.
Dang. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. But yeah, a lot of the people on this channel probably are somewhat familiar with it, but I will say this. Listening to Sean is like very enlightening, right? Because there's a lot of misconceptions about it. And then there's this like propensity to kind of just make things up, right? That sound maybe like exciting in some story or whatever.
Yeah.
The story is crazy enough on its own. You really don't need to do that.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Especially the idea, because we've been told that there is no heaven, there is no, supernatural celestial beings, and all that is just ancient mythology, and you should be scoffed and laughed at if you even try to think about it and believe it. So yeah, that's why when we start talking about these things, people struggle for a minute.
Yeah. What's so interesting too, right? So like my birth mom or whatever, she gave me me and my sister up when we were young, right? So my dad remarried, but my stepmom's grandfather, so my great grandfather, he was like a Mason. And then as he like approached his deathbed, it seemed like he was shown some things where he was like freaking out. So basically he was like shown that it's not what he thought it was at a very old age. Which is wild, but yeah. So he started freaking out, man. And he told my mom he was freaking out about it. And he like rejected a Masonic funeral and they were super pissed about it. And at his funeral, there was like the Scottish Rite guy all dressed out. He asked me what my blood type was. Like didn't just randomly just ask me what my blood type was. I didn't know what my blood type was. But anyway, so whenever we were going through his stuff, I bring that up because he had a Masonic Bible, an older one. And in that Bible is just a bunch of Egyptian symbolism, all the Egyptian gods all throughout it. Right.
Right.
So yeah, it does seem like I don't know what your take on that is to start there, right? We obviously have a lot of ancient depictions, but it seems like the Egyptian depictions are like propped up to the top in the occult.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this or not, but I don't know, man. This was like 2016, maybe 2017. Mark Sargent did an interview with a guy that was an ex-Mason, and he said he was like a 32nd degree, and he said that when he got into his like 29th degree, that they did a weird Egyptian ceremony for him and brought out all these Egyptian statues and told him like their belief in their true religion, and they truly believe like the Egyptian gods, basically.
We're 29th?
I think that's what he said, if I'm remembering correctly. It's a long time ago, obviously. It's like almost 10 years ago now, but yeah, it was an old Mark Sargent interview that he did.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? Because I think my great grandfather was like 32nd, and then like close to when he died. And it's almost like when he found out, he like started to get really ill, bro. And he started to like go crazy, and it was wild. I'll just say he was not with it, and he was just like all the time. And every time we go over to his house, he was just like on his knees praying by himself. Whatever it was freaked him out, man. I don't really know the specifics, right? He would never tell me, and I would ask him questions about it, and he'd be like, "I can't tell you that." And all he would ever tell me is that if two Masons are in a pitch black room, we know they're both in there. And then some say that's like a reference to like a certain handshake. You don't have to see each other. Whatever. I don't really know, but he would never really tell me whatever. And then he used to always tell me that that I was supposed to be a preacher or something. But I will say, the guy at his funeral, man, was creepy, dude.
Yeah.
Like that guy knew and was cool with it. So I don't know, like, because like think about it, you have like Odysseus coming out, right? And everyone talking about Odysseus, the movie, and it's still it's like paying homage back to this like Greek idea, and then you have the Greek gods, the Clash of the Titans. You obviously have the same story of like Nimrod all over the world, but just with different names. And then you have the whole like Isis, Osiris being dismembered into 13 pieces and 13 colonies, and the phallic symbol, which is Washington, D.C. as the phallic symbol, right at the capital of the 13 colonies, effectively, right?
Pyramid on the back of the dollar is 13 steps.
Yeah.
There's 13 stars on the right side of the dollar. There's 13 arrows. There's 13 feathers.
Yeah, what do you think that's about, right? Like people say there are 13 bloodlines. Do you think it's just all kind of paying, like it just literally he was dismembered into 13 pieces, and do you think that's what it was? Like he was literally dismembered?
Well, if that Egyptian story is correct, it's possible that that's true. But I don't know how the quote unquote 13 bloodline families, I don't know if that's the reason they chose to be like that, right? To segment themselves in that way. But regardless, they still worship Osiris and all the symbology that goes with ancient Osiris and ancient Ra. So this is why they even say that the eagle on the back of the dollar bill, I've heard people say like, oh, that the average person thinks it's an eagle, but actually it's supposed to be the phoenix. Because the idea of the phoenix was like, it was attributed to Osiris or the Greek Apollo, and that it was the one that was destined to return, to rise from the ashes and do.
So that's a good segue there, right? Because says that's also on like The Economist, where the phoenix comes up and he's got like a new currency in his hand, and it's everywhere. And actually, ironically, the school I played football for, that their mascot was the phoenix. But so like that does seem to be a thing, right? Where like it's also, in my opinion, conditioned in the Matrix, right? Like they're waiting for a specific entity that's supposed to help them fight off the agents. Which there's obviously the interpretation that those are like archangels and everything's like flipped upside down in the Matrix. But either way, there's like a lot of occultic signs that point to the return of the being that they once worshipped, right? And it does seem like they say all roads lead to Rome, right? Which really lead to like Babylon. So it seems like there's this huge obsession with Babylon. And then there's this huge obsession with Nimrod, Osiris, Gilgamesh, the man of many names or whatever, and that he's going to return. And so so you would say that would be like in Revelation where we're told about Apollyon and Abaddon.
Yes. Yeah. The word Apollyon is the Latin transliteration of Apollo. Apollo, the ancient Greek god. There was only one Apollo. There was not like any other stories about another Apollo. And so he was like, if you're in the first century and John just gave you the manuscript of the book of Revelation, right? Because he had the vision with the angel who told him to write it down. Like if you were to read that in his day, everyone knew who Apollo was. Like there was no ambiguity. There was no, I wonder who he's talking about. Maybe it's a future president across the Atlantic Ocean, with orange face and yellow hair. No. Like people would have known 100%. Like we know who Apollo is. Yeah. Okay. So you're saying Apollo's going to come up out of the pit. Oh, that's where he says it is. He is now. So that makes sense. So like in the ancient world, Apollo is supposed to be in the abyss, the waterless pit, the underworld. So for example, like in the ancient world, like Zeus lived in the sky, Ra lived in the sky, but Apollo or Osiris, when he died, he went to the underworld to become the king of the underworld. In second in command to Ra, second in command to Zeus.
Gotcha. So then that would be like Satan or Azazel, and would be like the top in command. His kind of number two would be Apollo. Or Abaddon or the return of Osiris.
And then once Apollo, because Apollo was in the Greek mythology was given like some specific lore, but in the Egyptian mythology, he overlapped with his lore because he was the sun god, Osiris, also god of agriculture. And then once he died, he replaced Anubis as the god of the underworld. But Anubis was still like high up in the, third in command now, if you will.
And
right?
it's
So that's
his
why,
number two. It's his number
right?
two. Guys.
Yeah, that's and according to the Epic of Gilgamesh, this is what I believe it's trying to tell us about um, the character and his friend that was considered like a beast, that was his most loyal friend. Right, so it's giving you the story of Apollo and Anubis, or Apollo and Hermes, Osiris and Anubis, which in the Chaldean language you'd be referencing them according to, it would be like what's the guy's name? Era, or in the biblical reference for him from the Chaldea, he would be like what's this called? The temples to, I'm going blank on the Chaldean translated name. Put it in the live chat, guys. If someone in my audience knows, I'm having a blanked out moment right now. But basically, they his name was Era to the Chaldeans, the Assyrians, but he was also called he's the guy with the scorpion tail and the axe. If Tyler's in here, you know what I'm talking about, Tyler. Hang on one second.
And so just so, because people may not
Nurgle,
know, right?
yeah,
So
Nurgle. So in the Bible, in Jeremiah 35, it talks about how some of the people that have been taken into Babylonian captivity, they were given like new names, and part of their names, they would have one of their gods infused into a part of their new name, right? So like servant of this god. So you would call them Abed Nurgle. And that's what you see the god Nurgle being referenced in the book of Jeremiah for the Hebrew captivity as they try to rename them. So Nurgle is the one that is the name he goes by mostly. Era is his like epitaph that's not most well known, but Nurgle is referenced in the Bible. He is the one that I believe is the second beast of Revelation 13 that helps Apollo when he comes. It helps Apollyon, the first beast, when he comes out of the pit to force the world to worship the first beast, just as he did in the ancient days. So there was temples to Nurgle throughout the Mediterranean in the ancient days, and it was like he was the god of commerce. He was the one that the Greeks would consider to be the god of wisdom, the god of war, the god of the underworld, a psychopomp to the underworld, a magician, as well as a god of commerce, and they called him Hermes or Mercury. So the Greek version of Hermes, who had the Cerberus, the three-headed dog of hell, is Nurgle to the Chaldeans, the Babylonians, and his temples were all throughout the Mediterranean, of which were major centers of commerce. Imagine like an ancient Amazon warehouse. Okay, so like when they came forward and bring their worship, all their vow offerings to that false god and all their first fruit offerings, they would go into a massive storehouse, and then they would sell the excess to the people out of their marketplaces, out of the back of the temple, right? So this is where the temples to Nurgle were like bigger than everything else. So this doesn't get talked about a lot in churches or a lot in history because people just focus on like Satan and the first beast, right? They just focus on Azazel and Apollo. But no one ever tries to identify, wait a minute, does the Bible already tell us who the second beast is? Because he's the guy who creates the mark, and he's the guy who creates the image of the first beast and forces people to worship, and then forces all the nations to worship the image of the first beast. Like he's the enforcer of the first beast's will of false worship. So nobody tries to like, figure out who that is. But if you look in history, it's like the same guy that was the same position in these ancient worlds, like Anubis, the god of war, the god who was a chief psychopomp and magician who assisted Osiris, right? Hermes and Mercury. He was a god considered a god of war and information who would be in the pantheon with Zeus and Apollo. And so that's why it was such a big deal it's such a big deal to see Revelation chapter 9 that when Apollo returns, there's a whole bunch of other things that come out of the pit with him.
Well,
the first verse of chapter 1 of Revelation 9 says it requires an angel to come down and unlock with a key to the bottomless pit and unlock it and open it up.
Right.
So I got a bunch of verses I can go into to kind of like, that's a wild introduction, I know, but there's a bunch of verses I can go into that can give us a better foundation for these concepts.
Yeah, for sure. Just to clarify, right? So Anubis is like the dog head looking guy from the ancient world.
Yeah.
And then so the idea is that you have Osiris, Gilgamesh, Apollo, and then his second in command, which is like this god of the underworld, like dog-headed guy, like hybrid.
Yeah.
And then he kind of helps enforce his reign. So this was like, they were like literal physical beings that were worshipped as gods.
Yes. Yeah. And this was like the early dynasties of the ancient Egyptian story. We're talking like 18th, 17th century BC. So I would project that to be right around the time of the Tower of Babel.
Right.
To where historian Josephus even tells us they were already worshiping a form of Zeus at the Tower of Babel, which the Egyptians would have called Ra. Okay. Or Ptah in its, or Amun in its earlier form, but then it gets later most famously known as Amun-Ra, and that's where Ra comes from. So that's where the Hebrews would just straight up call him Satan. Like, this is Azazel, this is the devil, this is the dragon, right? All the people in the Old Testament that documented within history had the writings of Enoch, so they knew the story of like, where did this Ra character come from? Where did all these beings that are in the service of the Satan character, or Ra or Zeus, where did they come from? And what are their capabilities? What's going on here? And if you'd like to, we can set a foundation and go to the book of Enoch and explain that.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Because this is a lot of misinformation around this topic, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah. And what's interesting is people will borrow from the book of Enoch to talk about their ideas, but then not actually use the details that are explained in the book of Enoch to fully flesh them out, right?
Yeah.
They just talk about, oh yeah, angels came down and took women and had made the Nephilim, and then that's kind of like where they stop, and then they just start adding their own story after that. And I'm like, wait a minute, why don't you just stick to what the rest of the narrative says, and you won't be confused by the time you get to the
people do that with the Bible scriptures too, man. They just pick and choose, cherry pick it.
Yes, they do. Okay, so we're all aware of the concept of the angels, the children of heaven, that saw women, lusted after them, come set a list, take wives among the children of men, and beget us children. They're all aware of that, right? And this is why it introduces Samyaza as their leader. And he's the one that talks about, he tells his boys, hey, I don't want to do this alone. I'll get in a lot of trouble. So therefore, let us swear an oath and all bind ourselves by mutual curse not to abandon this plan to do this thing. So they all swore together and bound themselves by mutual curses upon it. Now, this word curses is the word for imprecations, which is another variant of the word spell or curse or enchantment. Depends on what aspect of magic you're talking about. So they bound themselves with this oath that is a part of a spell. This is magic, okay? This is like, they're manipulating the powers of the creation. That's what magic is. Most people should know that, right? They're manipulating the powers of creation to achieve their will against God's will in some perversion, some form of perversion. And so this is why they bound together. If you want me to make this bigger, I can. One second here. We'll get this. Yeah, there we go. So this is why this is the start of the story. They did this literally on a mountain that's still in Israel today, in northern Israel, called Mount Hermon. It's called the Mountain of the Oath because of that. And it says there's only 200 of these guys that are there as a part of this. Okay. So then chapter 7, it introduces a guy named Azazel, and it tells you that he taught men swords, knives, shields, breastplates. He made known to the metals of the earth and the working of them, bracelets, ornaments, use of antimony, basically types of makeup, all kinds of costly stones and coloring tinctures. So painting, art and war. Art and war, seduction, art and war, basically. This is what he's good at. And this is what we still see running rampant across the earth today. The industrialized nations use the gears of war, the machines of war, the industrial military complexes in order to continually do perpetual warfare. There's continual fornication and sexual immorality upon the earth, as well as the workings of metals, which we're constantly trying to figure out better ways to use stronger, lighter metals, using metals for weapons, using all types of, for our iPhones, the silver, the platinum, in your iPhones, all types of stuff, right? As well as a economic system based off those metals, right? So we got warfare, sexual morality, economics, right? That's all attributed to Azazel. The rest of the guys were doing other things. Samyaza taught magic and root cuttings. Armoros taught resolving of enchantments, which is like a deeper level of magic. Barakiel taught astrology, right? We still see that around, right? Kokabiel taught constellations. Ezekiel taught the knowledge of the clouds. Arakiel, the signs of the earth. Shamsiel, the signs of the sun. Another dude, Sariel, the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to the heaven. So Enoch is actually going to be explained by the good angels. He's going to be explained some of this stuff as well throughout the book of Enoch. But what do we see the enemy always doing? They're using this information for bad, right? The astrology, the signs of the heavens, the moons, that kind of stuff. And even if you want to get in a technical facet, even once we get into the heliocentric lie, we see that they're using this information of the sorrow cycle and the movements of the sun and the moon to act as if they have probes in the sky, to act as if they have satellites out in orbit, to act as if they know three-body motion, act as if they know distances between. Like they use this implicitly as a part of their deception. They act like they got weather satellites up there to tell you the weather, but yet Ezekiel teaches the knowledge of the clouds, right? Which is what in chapter 72 through 82 in Enoch, the good angels tell Enoch, this is how you understand the weather in the clouds. Right? So like, man, God wants to give this information to you, but these guys came, they were initially sent to help mankind flourish because they started they started having a bunch of kids and having a decent sized population. And Jubilees chapter 10 said they were initially sent down to the earth to help them govern themselves and learn how to govern themselves in peace. But instead, while they're there, they saw some shorties they liked and took wives and started then taking all kinds of liberties to teach all the secrets of heaven that men were striving to learn, causing much sin, lawlessness, and godlessness. Okay, so this is where the beginning of the story happens, and then this is where the Nephilim come in. When they took their wives, they chose one for themselves, began to go in unto them, defile themselves with them. They taught them charms and enchantments and the cutting of roots, made them acquainted with plants. I think you and I talked about that in a previous video, right? This is how they did the actual pharmakia of the growth hormones that creates giants naturally, right? But mixed with the charms and enchantments, we're going to go over that in just a minute, as well as the oath that Samyaza talked about in chapter 6, the imprecations. This is why the children that they bear were giants, and those giants were not mankind. They're in later chapters, they're called spiritual beings, like in chapter 10. Okay? And these men, they begin to sin against the animals, the birds, the beasts, the reptiles, the fish, devour mankind, and the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. So it's horrific, right? It even says mankind's running out of acquisitions. They're like, the giants consumed all the acquisitions of men. So you're going to have famine and plague and a whole bunch. There's problems, right? They need calories, right? If they're big. Yeah. But here's the difference, though. Okay, there's a physical flesh running around. So we go down here to chapter 10, where it talks about the sons of the Watchers. Okay, and they've corrupted themselves. Let's see here, to destroy the reprobates against the children of fornication, and destroy the children of the Watchers from amongst men. And it goes down here, furthermore, destroy the spirits of the reprobate and the children of Watchers, because they've done wrong to mankind. And here it goes. Cleanse the earth from oppression. We're almost there. Hang on a second. Yeah, cleanse the earth. So they're calling the unrighteous children of the Watchers, as well as the because the angels are not destroyed; they're literally just repositioned into Tartarus. The angels are not destroyed, but the children of the reprobates, that they're being called spiritual beings, because even though they had a body that can interact, they lost that body, and as a result, they're still on the earth. This is why they're called the Nephilim, whom are unclean spirits today. I think a lot of people in the audience already know what this is, but just to kind of draw the correlation here, this is why they still want to possess the bodies of living things, right? So like in the New Testament, you see that they're willing to go into the pigs. Legion is willing to go into the pigs, right? They're already possessing young boys and young girls and grown men in the book of, in Mark and Luke and Matthew, like lots of possessions of grown adults. Even though they were originally giants, then they lost their bodies, and now they're unclean spirits that They were never intended, and they were an abomination created through magic and fornication. So this is why all the magic today is always about ritual sex magic, as you probably already know that, right? That's why it's still about that today, because it was always about that. The ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans used to believe that when they were born, that a demon was assigned to them when they were born, and that they were to worship that demon once a year on their birthday with a special sacrifice and offering. But they also believed that that demon would interact in their life. They actually called them a genius. It's just like the English word genius, but it was, to the Romans, it meant something different. It meant a spirit that accompanied you in your life, and that spirit, you had like the most spiritual interaction with that spirit whenever you were having sex. So it's always been about ritual sex magic for demons. Okay, that's been their MO, and that's why they're considered spirits of wickedness and perversion. So this is kind of the grounding foundation and of where these things came from. So then after the flood, it's again, it's calling them these spirits, the spirits of the giants. They afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They don't take food, but nevertheless they hunger, they thirst, they cause offense. These spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they proceeded from them. They shall be called evil spirits on the earth, and evil spirits shall they be called.
So just to clarify for people that maybe are not familiar with it, what people call demons are these spirits, right? Disembodied spirits from the Nephilim, the offspring of the Watchers, who are now locked up. They're all locked up. They don't get out until the very end when they're being judged. You have Azazel not locked up, but then you have the quote unquote demons. Because a lot of people, as you know, they'll say the demons are like the fallen angels, but they're not. They're the disembodied spirits that weren't supposed to be created, so there's nowhere for them to go. Like we have a place to go. You know, the fallen ones have a place that they were put, but these entities are just aimlessly wandering around, hungry and thirsty, can't be satiated, and then they need someone that's basically an open vessel to embody, because they're yearning for a body because they're disembodied spirits. That's
right. This, I think, is where the magic, no pun intended, but I think this is where the magic happened, with Samyaza being the teacher of enchantments and root cuttings, and he's the one who led these other angels to go and take wives and have children through them. Whereas Azazel did not participate in that. That's why he gets a different judgment. He's not sent to Tartarus. He's left out on the earth. But Samyaza, being the one that apparently knew about the enchantments and the root cuttings, or at least that was his forte, so to speak. That's why it says here in this verse 8 and 9, now the giants who are produced from the spirits in the flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they were born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. It's kind of like, so are you familiar with the liger?
Mm-hmm.
You know, liger, like it's a lion father and a tiger mother, right? Mm-hmm. So even though they're the same big cat family, so they have a lot of similar genetics, right? That's compatible. That the reason why it grows 4 times larger than a normal lion or cat or tiger is because the DNA from the father, that's why the LI is put at the front of the term, because it's the DNA from the father is basically what, you know, supersedes the tiger DNA to enough to where it switches off the growth inhibitors and allows it to just grow bigger and bigger than a normal sized tiger or lion. So that's why they don't call them tyons, they call them ligers, right? So that's what I think what we're seeing here. I can't give you the complex genetic sequencing, but I think that's what we're seeing here. This is why they're called evil spirits, and still, even when their bodies died, evil spirits went forth from their bodies and stayed on the earth, because their original origin was from spiritual beings and not from the men of the earth.
Right.
Okay. So this is the Bible, guys. This is like, a lot of people may struggle with the book of Enoch, but look, this literally, Jude is quoting the book of Enoch in the New Testament. Christ is preaching directly from the book of Enoch in chapter 22 about the afterlife. Like, you would have to call Christ a false prophet if you think that, because he's literally like almost beat for beat, word for word explaining chapter 22 of First Enoch in Luke 16. So it was documented history. They all knew what the Book of Enoch was. They had it in their possession as one of their scrolls in first century Israel. They called it sacred scripture by church fathers all the way up into the 4th century. Just because it didn't get put in the Catholic or the Greek canon, it was put in other canons like the Ethiopian canon. So a lot of people just don't know the history of like how the Bible was put together over time. And unfortunately, in the United States, a lot of people are sold this idea that the Book of Enoch is somehow some, crazy, false, pseudepigraphal concept, but actually it's quoted by Christ, Peter, and Jude in the New Testament. What's interesting is about these holy watchers, who are the fathers in this particular case here, it says they're sent to Tartarus. And 1 Peter 2:4 says, talking about the angels who sinned, speaking of these guys right here, right? Where did Peter get this idea, right? And also says they're in Tartarus. That word Tartarus is not found in Genesis. It's only found in the Book of Enoch, speaking about the angels who sinned. That's where they were sent. So again, they're preaching directly from this thing. This is in ancient Israel. This was a part of their sacred writings. They believed this was true information. Okay.
Isn't it also Jude that talks about them, the angels leaving their heavenly estate? Yeah. Yeah.
Jude is quoting chapter 1 of all things, like literally chapter 1. Like he's quoting this right here in chapter 1 when the second coming of Christ, which is literally when the Holy One is going to come down to the earth and dwell on mankind and dwell with mankind. So like, of course, his son precedes him to make ready the way. But like, this is what he's quoting from chapter 1 and right here. And a lot of, it's just that would make Jude a false apostle, that he's quoting from a false work. And all. So there's just a bunch of silly arguments against Enoch. And to me, Austin, it makes perfect sense that the enemy would want people to not believe in what's like literally a validated historical book from ancient Israel that Jesus, Peter, and Jude quoted from, because it literally tells you who the enemy is and where they came from.
Yeah.
Like, here's the origins of Satan. Here's the origins of these unclean spirits that are trying to like work wickedness up on the earth and are, influencing world leaders and trying to get you to sin. And like this is the enemy that we're told we're dealing with. So of course they would want to hide their origins, right? And not get people to believe it. So, all right. So what did we cover so far? Rebellious angels came down, took wives. Some sort of magic was used to where they had the power to create a spiritual being through a womb of flesh, right? Which is a perversion, right? How do they create? How did DARPA in 2011 create a goat that produces spider silk in its milk? I don't know, but they did it, right? So they could harvest that silk and make stronger bulletproof vests with it, right? For the military. So I didn't know that an arachnid would be compatible with a mammal as far as the DNA to be spliced and spider silk would come out of a goat milk, but they did it and they're actively using it in bulletproof vests for the military today. So like that's crazy, right? So clearly there's some sense of compatibility within the creation, and if you know how to manipulate it, this is what was it like? There's governments today that are constantly saying, yes, we can create hybrid beings, like we can splice things together, right? And it works to a certain degree, and they claim that they're just trying to figure out how to make it work better, right? But if we go down to this oath that Samyaza was talking about, right? He said, let us swear an oath and all bind ourselves by this mutual curse, not to abandon this thing, but to go through with it. Okay. So if you go down to chapter 69, because we have to remember that the book of Enoch is compiled of different scrolls. It's like 6 different scrolls that are partial ones they found throughout history. So it's not all one continuous story, but thankfully the pieces that are left over to us through history is enough for us to put together a very coherent storyline. So the rebellious angels that are listed off again in chapter 69, it tells you, let me see here. It tells you their names again, okay? The first of them is Samyaza. Okay, starts listing off their names again. All right, giving you at least the chiefs. It doesn't list off all 200 of them, but it says these are their chiefs and their names, the chief ones over hundreds, 50s, and 10s. Okay, so these are like the head dudes.
So it names 20 of them. So basically they were over 10 each? It says 21 of them.
Well,
20, and then you have Azazel.
There's multiple Azazels. So yeah, it's suspected that this last one is the Azazel that. Anyway, so yeah, there's 21.
Aside from
Exactly, because he actually did some different things and got a different judgment. So, so there's it basically goes into saying like they were, it gives a little bit more description on the types of things that they did. But then this guy here, this guy's name is Casbiel, and it says that he was the chief of the oath, which he showed to the holy ones when he dwelt high above in glory. And its name is Beka. So that the name of the oath is Beka. And this angel requested Michael to show him the hidden name that he might enunciate it in the oath so that they might quake before that name, which that word name in the Hebrew and the Greek means authority. So that he might enunciate this hidden name, which carries with it authority to actually accomplish what they are submitting themselves into the oath to do. And the oath who revealed all that was in secret to the children of men. So this is where it then goes on to explain the power of this oath. It says it's powerful and strong, and he placed this oath, which is called the Akeh, in the hand of Michael. And then it says, these are the secrets of this oath. They're strong through this oath. The heaven was suspended before the world was created and forever. Through it, the earth was founded upon the water. The secret recesses of the mountains become beautiful waters from the creation of the world unto eternity. Through the oath, the sea was created and its foundations. He set forth the sand against the time of its anger, and it dares not pass from the creation of the world into eternity. So he goes through different aspects of creation, even the winds and the chambers of hail and hoarfrost, the weather patterns that are released through the firmament. He goes through the whole thing to explain like all of creation is kept in place through the power of this oath. And this is the one that the rebellious angels are using. This is what they asked for permission to use, basically. Now, why God gave it to him, it's up to him, but that's what happens. And this oath is mighty over through them, and they're preserved. Their paths are preserved. Their course is not destroyed. And it's talking about all the aspects of creation, even the stars, everything, right? So, and then it goes on to a different aspect. This is a different piece of manuscript on that part there. But the point is, it's explaining to you, they went and asked for the oath. He showed it to the rebellious watchers. They then used it within their magical incantation to create a spiritual being through the impregnation of a woman, a womb of a woman. And that's why the giants, when they were born, they were primarily a spiritual being and not a man, even though they had a body that they inhabited. But once they lost that body, so think about this, brother. Like, I know you've studied like the occult enough to know, like they're constantly trying to find, like they want to be able to find the perfect host for a spirit to inhabit the body of, right? Because like with mankind, our body doesn't react well whenever a person is possessed. They either lose their mind or they develop some sort of sickness and their body deteriorates. They start having seizures. There's a whole host of things that happen. Like it's rare for a person to be actually possessed and their body doesn't react in a negative way, because you're not supposed to be. You're not supposed to be. They're literally called unclean for a reason. They bring sickness with them. Okay, mental or physical sickness with them. So it's been the goal, in my opinion, of the occult for a long time to find a suitable host body that would allow these spirits to inhabit and move about and get back into the world of mankind and continue to interact in a more physical way. Because what does Christ tell us in Luke chapter 11? That whenever you cast out a demon, he goes through dry and arid spaces, and then he comes back to the person that he first inhabited to see if the house is swept clean and still empty. And if it is, he brings back 7 times more. So he brings 7 more demons with him, so that the condition of the man is worse than originally before he was cast out. So this way, these demons he brings with him are stronger than himself, so that the second possession of the man will be worse than the first time, right? So they'll be harder for them to get kicked out. And that's why Jesus then later responds, it's, how do you avoid this? That you hear the words of God and obey them. That's how you fill the house up so the demons can't come back. So the demons are looking for a place to reside, because it says they go out to dry and arid places and go around. But just like 1 Enoch 10 said, although they thirst, they're never satisfied. They never find a place for their thirst. They hunger, but they're never filled. And their design, their hatred is against mankind, to attack and to destroy mankind, right? So if they can get a man deceived enough to let them in, the man's body is not capable of hosting it long term. So a man's body or a woman's body will start to develop some sort of disease or mental instability, psychosis, that kinds of stuff, right? And of course, pharmakia is a massive open door for these things to come in. Yeah. Because it takes you out of yourself and just it does something. I can't tell you the exact science, but it clearly does something to your brain and your chemicals that allows them to come in easier. So I'm sure you saw people on bath salts a few years ago. They were just acting like actual demons, trying to cannibalize people, running around.
Yeah, there's also a lot of crazy stories with like SSRIs and stuff like that. Yeah. All
right, so some of the stuff people think, well, I've heard this before. That's great. Yeah, yes. So now this is where the story that I just showed you from First Enoch. At no time does it say that these rebellious angels that were sent to Tartarus, that they get out. They get out. Let's go to their punishment. This is important for context for folks, okay? So I put that back in the studio. And their punishment is listed in further up here. Let me go to real quick.
Yeah, because obviously, like another part of this, right, is of course the Hebrew people they're put in captivity by Babylon, and then that's where you get the Babylonian Talmud, and you get a lot of these Kabbalistic beliefs that are integrated and passed down, and a bunch of like effectively magic.
Yeah.
And then it's where you also get the changing of the Hebrew language itself, right? You get like the Babylonian cuneiform version of Hebrew, and then the Babylonian Talmud, and you get that passed down through Babylon. And then you have this like obsession with Babylonian deities moving forward.
Right. And that's why so many people believe like the ancient depictions of the ancient world was always these weird chimeric style, like half man, half something, they had these chimeric depictions of these considered gods. And that there was always a patron head deity, which if you do a diligent study on it, it always goes back to Satan, right? And to the Canaanites, he was called El. He was the top patron god. To the Egyptians, he's Ra. To the Greeks, he's Zeus, that kind of thing.
So you would have like demigods, which would be their offspring, and then you would have like little g gods, which would be like the watchers.
And that this is where the concept of the avatar came from in India, is that these demigods that were in great authority to the ultimate god Brahma, that they would need new forms to possess over time. So like a lot of people don't realize this, but the Buddha, the form of the Buddha is the 9th avatar of Vishnu. Vishnu is like, Vishnu is the Hermes character. He's the Nurgle character. He's the Anubis character in the pantheon in ancient India. So like Brahma would be the equivalent of Zeus or Ra. And then you had Shiva. He's the equivalent of Apollo or Osiris, the destroyer. And then you had Vishnu. And he was the one that was god of commerce, the magician, the psychopomp to the underworld. He's also in Indian lore, he's prophesied to return and be a part of the destruction of the future Earth.
That's crazy, yeah.
So they don't talk about that a lot as translated into English culture, but that's what the Indians believe. So the point is, like, that's post-flood, and they showed their lesser demigod deities to have different avatars over time throughout different kingdoms. So the Buddha was like the 9th version, the 9th avatar of Vishnu. So on screen right here is Enoch chapter 10, where it tells the Samyaza and his associates that united themselves with women and defiled themselves. Michael is sent to go and tell them what's going to happen to them, right? Here's your judgment, guys. And it says, and when their sons have slain one another, so the giants are going to have kind of like a civil war. They're going to kill each other. That's how they lose their bodies. And then after the rebellious angels who are the fathers of these giants, they watch this. It says, after they've seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth till the day of their judgment and of their consummation, till the judgment that is forever and ever is consummated. In those days, they shall be led off to the abyss of fire, to the torment. So in the days of their judgment, they shall be led off to the abyss of fire, to the torment, and the prison in which they shall be confined forever. Now, Christ tells us in the Gospels that the lake of fire is created for the devil and his angels. Okay, that's why.
Well, it says it right there. It says they're locked up till the day of their judgment.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and Samyaza shall be condemned and destroyed, and then so that's like wrapping up the overall judgment, locked up until you're let out and thrown in an abyss of fire. And he will from now on be bound together with them till the end of all generations. So this is where it's like, okay, there's a time of consummation. They're locked in the earth until the judgment, and they're bound together, Samyaz and the rest of them. This is why 1 Peter 2:4 is talking about the spirits who sinned before the flood, that the angels who sinned are in Tartarus. And this is where chapter 20 tells you that the Samyaz and his associates are sent to Tartarus. That's where they're bound. So all this narrative that you hear in certain Christian circles on YouTube that were like, oh, the angels are coming back and there's like another incursion. They're going to have more Nephilim children. They're going to take wives and they scare a bunch of women with this story. Like that's not going to happen again. That's not even what the book of Enoch says. This is what the book of Enoch says.
Yeah. So, and then it specifically, like it specifies, go bind the associates who have united themselves with women. So this is where you would get the idea that Azazel or Azazel wasn't binded up because he didn't do that.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So this is why in chapter 9 it tells you about Azazel's punishment. In verse 4, bind him hand, foot, cast him in the darkness, make an opening in the desert, which is Diduel, cast him therein, place him on him rough and jagged rocks, cover him with darkness, let him abide there forever, cover his face that he may not see light. Now, just as this is the pronouncement of when he's going to be thrown in the earth for 1,000 years after Christ returns, it goes on in chapter 54 through 56 to better explain when he's judged and thrown in the hole in the ground is at the coming of the elect one. And all of his unclean spirits with him are destroyed at that time as well. So in case this is like an unanswered question in the canon of 66, people never really ask, wait a minute, what happens to demons when Christ returns? Are they going to be here? Are they going to be gone? What happens to them? He destroys them when he returns. So when Christ returns upon the earth and reigns for 1,000 years, Satan's locked away in a hole, demons are destroyed, the first and second beasts are destroyed. And what I mean by destroyed is like the lake of fire is not a Catholic medieval interpretation of like Dante's Inferno, where you just like perpetually stay alive and burn forever. Like that's a medieval invention. Okay. Yeah. That's not what the Hebrew believed the lake of fire, just like Jesus teaches in Matthew 10. The Gehenna, the lake of fire, kills you both body and it destroys your body and your soul. So there's nothing left of you.
Like throwing fire in there. I mean, paper and fire.
Right. Yeah. So the lake of fire, it's very interesting that it's a lake that is on fire. Because water burns, by the way, but also it's specifically designed to destroy the bodies of angels. Because angels are they're not made of the dirt of the earth, they're made of water.
Made of water, yeah.
So that's why it's such a unique concept. So, and a lot of people would believe that your soul is made of the breath of God, like Genesis 2:7 says that he breathed into Adam's physical form, that he formed from the dirt, and it became a living soul once God breathed into it. So this is why the soul is different from the body. Okay.
Yeah. Well, so totally, well, not totally random, but like, so when you get into this idea that we went to Afghanistan shortly after they said that they found the tomb of Gilgamesh right beside the Babylonian museum that we then raided, and we literally set up our military, like one of our military headquarters on where they claimed they found the tomb. Right. And then you obviously have like the WikiLeaks email from Hillary Clinton talking about the remains, the 2-man remains of Gilgamesh. But like, so that would obviously be like the one who's actually locked up right now. That would be Gilgamesh, Osiris, like we talked about, Apollo, the same guy. Yeah. So like in that idea, like his physical body, is it like, I'm just curious what your take on that is. Like, does he have his physical body actually was there? I guess there's no way for you to know that, but like, and
I
then
don't know
he
that,
exists separate from that. Like
even if they did find the remains of what was possibly mummified as an ancient body for ancient Osiris, I don't think it matters, because I think what they're always been trying to do, like, surely they may like his DNA, right? To try to infuse into some new type of body they can make for him. But if they get to a point where they can actually somehow grow an android type of fleshly golem that he could inhabit, they may prefer that. But that's what I was suggesting earlier, was that I think they've always been trying to, and with modern advancements in technology, we're going to go into this. We call it modern and advancements, but it's not modern. They were doing this in the ancient past.
Yeah,
and I got some slides to read from that, where they believed that they had already robotic automatons that were powered by unclean spirits.
Yeah, and this goes into like bringing life to the image, and AI and all this stuff. But like, so then.
Yeah, so they had an invocation ceremony back in the day. So like, when you read the Bible and you're always reading about, oh, they made a statue to Molech, or they made a statue to Baal, and God was mad, right? So, or Dagon, right? Remember like the story of Dagon where God just kept pushing over the statue of Dagon, and then finally it broke its head off when it fell over like a second or third time, just to shame the Philistines for worshiping Dagon. Yeah. So because they thought it was alive, but yet it can't keep itself from being pushed over and broken.
Yeah.
Right. So they used to have this invocation ceremony where they would basically try to fool the priests and the people watching, to where they would do a magical ritual to try to invite the demon into the actual idol so that it would speak to them.
Yeah.
So historically, they claim that they were able to do this through unclean spirits. And then at other times, like if you run into like a secular archaeologist and ancient, historian who doesn't believe in the spiritual world, they'll tell you, oh, well, they just had like a cutout inside the idol, and then one of the priests would just stand behind it through a trap door and speak through it, and so he could just act like he's the god speaking through it, But like, why do the magical ritual if your priest is just going to do that anyway? So it's just kind of interesting that clearly we know that demons can talk. I don't know what your life has been like, but spiritual beings can talk. Demons can actually talk.
Yeah.
Most
like
people
people's
understand
voice
that.
will change.
Sometimes they can talk without possessing a person. I've heard that before. I've actually heard him cackle and laugh from within a wall.
I don't know.
Austin, the wall was this big, this thick.
Yeah.
So there was nothing. There was a foyer on the other side of this small partition wall, and I've got my ear up to it, and there's a grown man's voice laughing from within the wall in a maniacal, evil cackle.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
The only thing I've ever heard of anything like that was through like a radio.
Well, I don't think there's a radio on the wall, but yeah, I hear you. Okay.
No, I'm saying the only time I've ever heard something that I thought sounded like demons was through like a staticky channel on a radio. But
okay.
I've never,
or
like but yeah, I've heard people like their whole physiology change and then their voice change.
Yes, yes. My wife, she had some crazy encounters in the past with watching someone's face change while they were demon possessed.
Yeah, I've seen it straight up, and their eyes go black, and it's crazy, bro.
Yeah, so they can, in some regard, and apparently it's temporary, but they can manipulate reality and speak and push things over, and
pause on that, because we were kind of talking earlier, and like you just mentioned it, right? So this idea of like the incantation they asked for that seemed to bind like creation itself. So if you're talking about like an incantation that's used, something that's actually recited, an oath, an incantation that's used to like create the earth on the waters and all of creation. So it's like this idea of like an auditory vibration cymatically creating matter, right? I mean, like, or holding the matter together or something to that extent. Then why would they not be able to do that?
Yeah. And that oath said so that these things in the creation that it just mentioned are preserved with this oath, meaning like it's not going to stop. That's why the sun, moon, stars, and earth in the Bible are called eternal and everlasting. Like they're never going away. Right. So don't believe the lie when they tell you that the earth is going to die and fall out of its orbit and the sun's going to supernova and burn the earth and all that. Don't believe all that nonsense. Right. So like the God says that everything he made, the earth, the heavens, the seas, all that stuff, it's going to be eternal. And that's what 1 Enoch 69 is trying to say with the power of this oath and how God used it upon creating all this stuff is so that it lasts forever. It doesn't move. It doesn't become unstable. You know, the foundations of the sea suddenly just doesn't break up, right? So you've talked about in the past, right? The whole world is static electric.
Yeah.
So, which I think involves frequency.
Yeah, it does.
Which affects the matter to hold to itself. And I think that's what the power of this spoken, enunciated oath. They wanted to know, how do I say it?
Yeah.
To make it stick. And so what happens is they birth children who are eternal.
Yeah, that's a trip, dude. It's a trip because there's no reason for them to need to physically speak at all. Right. So there's something about like physically speaking. There's like a distinction between actual words coming out and like magic, right? If you want to call it that. Which is kind of crazy. Because that's what it is, right? Like speaking is vibration of the medium. So it kind of makes sense, right? Like the fundamental building block of everything being static electricity is vibration. That's all it is. It's pretty crazy because then you get obviously into the word, right? And the word became flesh, and the word, like everything being created through that. So
you wonder why that Christ gave authority for his disciples to go out and speak to demons and drive them out.
Yeah.
Right. So they respond to the spoken word to be driven out through the power. And so whatever that authority is, like the word authority, we think, oh, that's just a abstract concept that depends upon a mutual agreement of mankind towards a hierarchy. Right. But I think there's something deeper in the biblical use of the authority, because with it comes the power of God to affect reality. Right.
Yeah.
Jesus spoke to the tree that didn't produce fruit, and the next day it was dead.
Yeah, it's true. It's like actual speaking.
Jesus spoke to the storm and it calmed down.
It's the same with like casting out demons and stuff.
That's what I'm saying. This is why in Mark chapter 1, when he casts out the demon that was a mute spirit, they're all amazed and they're like, "Who's this that can just speak and cast these demons out? Who is it?" Like, because I don't know if you know this or not, but there's a history of exorcism in the ancient world, and before that, they would have to go through these long incantations, and they would read out. So there was 2 different ways they did exorcisms. And it was never with just like speaking and having the authority over these things. They would read out these long prayers and chant them for hours before the demon finally, possibly, sometimes, maybe, would acquiesce and give some sort of appearance as if it left the guy. Another way they did it was they claimed that they had a specific gemstone in a ring.
Yeah.
And that they would they would put like essential oil on it, if you will, a certain type of fragrant oil on the ring, and then they would go up to the possessed person and then run the ring in front of his nose and draw the demon out through his nose with the oil, the smell, and draw the demon out. Now, supposedly, there is let me go to this real quick. You want to put this on screen?
So I've had an experience where I've tried to like cast demon out, and it like attacked me, bro.
That's
like it didn't want to. It wasn't coming out. So I don't know how that works, right? Like I don't
remember what Christ said.
Didn't want it to come out or something.
Yeah, remember what Christ said. Sometimes it has to come out through fasting. So
the person would have to want to do it then, right? I mean, yeah,
yes.
Yeah, the whole voice change, turned, cussed me out, told me to stop, go away. Yes. Super mad.
1 second here.
So that's another thing too, right? So then we're talking about a dangerous thing to try to identify some type of demonic oppression for someone else and try and cast it out, but they aren't aware of it, or they don't want it gone or whatever. Even if you were to manage to get it to leave, right? Well, then, like you said, they could just come back sevenfold.
Well, it depends on the person. In order for it not to come back, the person who was just exorcised has to start actually obeying the commandments of God. And
right, so it's a terrible idea to try to help cast. Well, I didn't know this. I mean, I guess I knew of that, but I was just desperate. I was just like, dude, what, you know? But yeah, that's like, so it's actually like a bad idea. It's a bad idea if the person isn't on board and wants to like actually change and live, follow the law. It does help if the person is wanting to repent and follow God. Yes, they have to. Otherwise, they're going to be doing the same things that let the demon in. Again, and it's going to get even worse. It's going to be worse. Yeah.
So this is why there's stories.
Real fast. What do you think? Do you think this has a lot to do with like all these like mental ailments and illnesses and stuff like that? Because because I mean, I've been looking into that stuff. It's like if you really look into it, they don't really know. Like we just have a bunch of titles for things like MPD, BPD, all these things, and it's like they don't know. Like when they look into it, they don't really know. Like they're like, well, we're just characteristics, and we call it that. They can't explain it. I'm just wondering if like that's like
modern day medicine and psychiatry, it's all a shell game for not acknowledging the root reason, which is the person's behavior, their pharmakeia and levels, and most likely there's either their own willing involvement in the occult or they've been a victim of occult ritual, and so they need prayer, they need exorcism, they need help, just like the guy in the book of Luke in Matthew chapter 8, the guy with demoniac, the guy that was chained up in fetters outside of the town. The people didn't know what to do with him anymore, right? Because they couldn't cast the demons out, and the guy was violent, and they had tried to chain him up. He'd just break the chains like it was nothing, right? Yeah. And so Jesus comes along and frees the man. The man doesn't even ask for freedom.
Yeah.
Jesus knows this man is so far gone, he needs help.
Yeah.
The demons tantalize Jesus by speaking to Jesus and saying, have you come to, send us to the pit, or have you come to just, torment us before the appointed time? Well, that appointed time is told you in Enoch, by the way, when that is for demons. Yeah. So like they're trolling Jesus, but the man who's possessed, he's not even interacting. He's fully taken over, and Jesus recognizes this guy needs my help because the people can't do anything, right? So there is a level to where, and thankfully we now have that authority through Christ Jesus to be able to help people in that condition. But the point is, like, there was other ancient exorcism opportunities or concepts, and so I'm gonna put this. I'll put this in the studio if you want to throw it on screen real quick, and I'm gonna read something to you. This is a historical record, okay? Where'd it go? Image file. Here we go.
Shout out to the gifted subs, by the way. I'll read them out later.
Okay. So this is I actually put the historical record into Grok, and it made this image for me. Okay. So this is from the Antiquity of the Jews, Book 8, Chapter 2, Section 44. This was written around 93 AD. Okay. And this is describing that ancient exorcism practice that was different from what Jesus was doing, that was still happening in the first century, even after Jesus showed up. And so this is the guy who's standing over the guy on the ground. This is a guy named Eliezer, and he had a ring that had a special root in it that he thinks is what Solomon used back in the day. This is what they theorized. And he would place, he would place this root because it had a fragrant smell to it. He would place it underneath the guy's nose, and the demon would be drawn out. The demon would exit. And how they would know that they had proof is they would put like a little jar next to the demon-possessed guy laying on the ground, and they would tell the demon, knock over that water jar to prove you've left the body. And this is what typically, like, as he's pulling it out of him, he would like direct it towards the water jar, and he would knock over the water jar. And he did this in front of the Vespasian and his whole military. So basically the quote is, I've seen a certain man in my own country named Eliezer releasing people that were demonically in the demoniac, and he did this in the presence of Vespasian, his sons, his captains, and the whole multitude of his soldiers. So he would like show them, I can do this, it's real, this is the witness, this is a historical record that even the Roman emperor and the whole Roman military would watch exorcisms from time to time.
Wow. Yeah. Someone's saying, I'm not sure about that, bro. Sorry, I'm having an issue with my camera, but I'll fix it. I'm not sure about that, bro. Demons cannot physically interact with the material realm. You are grossly mistaken, my brother.
Yeah, that's not very accurate.
I personally witnessed it.
Me too. Personally. Yeah. Yep.
Did I ever tell you there was one time, like the first time I ever did activism, I was super nervous. I was never even on YouTube or anything at this point. And let me see if I can get this to work here. And I went outside. There we go. I was like in my hometown, and I got a mic, and I just started like preaching the Bible. in like a random, like a strip mall place. And this guy walked by me and he just like dropped all of his bags, all of his shopping bags, and then just started screaming and cussing like he was possessed, bro. And he started sprinting at me. And I literally just stood there. I stood there and looked at him and just kept talking. And as soon as he got within like 4 feet of me, he face planted.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? And then we had like there was like a tranny did the same thing in LA.
Wow.
And tried came all up on me. This is like on YouTube, and like started like just was possessed, and then just like couldn't get closer to me and couldn't keep talking. So it's like totally a real thing. Like on the tour, we probably had like 10 different interactions of people that were clearly possessed.
That's
And it was
awesome,
like
bro.
It was like something took over them, you know. But they couldn't touch us.
I mean, I meant to say that's awesome that Abba was protecting you.
Yeah, they couldn't touch us. They couldn't touch us, bro. Yeah. It's crazy. So it's a totally real thing. And then I have more intimate experiences too, but because, you know, a lot of people's path to salvation comes by way of that. Meaning when you realize how real that side of it is, you know, oh, the other side must be real. So many people go that way. Like I know so many people that when they find out like the powerful entities that kind of run everything are occultic, demonic, satanic, they're like, wait a minute. Wait, why are these super wealthy, intelligent, successful families obsessed with this? Why would they do this? Why do people have to sign contracts that say they can't say the word Jesus? Right? Why, like, well, what's up with it? Why is everyone obsessed with Christianity? You can be Islamic, you can be whatever you want to be. Say whatever you want to in a rap song, but don't say Jesus. Right? And that's like in actual contracts. And then people start to put it together like, wait a minute. And then actually makes them go look back over at the scriptures sincerely, right? And whatever path you need to go. Right. And I do think that's like a good time to point out, like from my experience, every time someone asks me, because, you know, people like to try to use their mind to figure everything out. And they want to be like, how do you know? How do you know? I'm like, dude, just ask. And like, this is going to rub some people the wrong way. My opinion is no one has ever sincerely asked and sought the answer from the Father and it not been shown to them. I know that sounds crazy. I guess I can't say that. I don't know for sure, whatever, but like, my experience is anytime I've directly asked if I'm being sincere, I was answered. Right. Like if you're real, show me whatever. Just show me if you're real. Show me. That's how my whole thing started. So that's what I would say to people. If you really want to know, just ask. Ask sincerely, and if you're sincere, as in like you want to know the truth, in my opinion, it'll happen. This is definitely a spiritual realm. We're definitely in like a really long spiritual war, and then our like human lives are like a whisper, right? They're like how does it describe it? It's like
it's man's life is but a vapor of breath. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's like nothing. So like we're in the midst of a huge spiritual war.
This is exactly what you're saying. Jesus said the same thing. If you ask, it'll be given to you. If you seek, you will find. If you knock, the door will be open for you. So this implies that you're pursuing. You're not just randomly asking. You got high one night and was like, God, show yourself to me. Like, no, like you're actually you're sincerely trying to seek him. You will find him. He will reveal himself to you. He will show you the truth. And this is what is described as the war that we're in Ephesians 6 here, that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, the authorities, the powers of this world's darkness, and spiritual forces in the heavenly realms. That's in the sky above you, not above the firmament, but in the sky above you is considered the heavenly realms also. So this is why it's not against flesh and blood. Your battle truly isn't against your fellow man. It's against spiritual forces of evil.
Even the people that wrong you.
That's why we got to forgive mankind.
It's hard to do sometimes, but yeah.
You don't have to forgive demons. You can have a righteous hatred toward them. That's okay, because they're not offered forgiveness. They're not going to forgive you. They're corrupted from the inside out forever. They're beyond repentance and redemption. So this is why they're considered spirits of evil that will always be evil, and they're going to be that way until like the legion, like the demons shouted at Jesus, there's an appointed time that they know they're going to be destroyed, and they know that they have from now until then to attack mankind. So this is where we can get them out of your life. You just have to obey God's words, repent and obey God's words. And that's, start doing his behavior.
What's your take on like what you get to the flood? It's like that on their mind was only evil continually, and that Noah was the last pure one left. Do you think this is like it was the only one that was righteously obedient, or like it was literally the only one pure?
I think there was a wide mixture of Nephilim at the time, so you're going to have genetic problems with the people, as well as the Book of Enoch explains the Watchers and their Nephilim sons were teaching mankind before the flood about idolatry and sorcery and enchantments.
So there were like people that were just rebelling.
Yeah.
And you could be turned
but
over.
It had
to a
gotten
hard
so
heart.
bad that it was very, very few good people left, like Noah and his family. So this is where it just gotten so bad, overwhelming, that mankind was about to be wiped out. There was no going to be no progenitive seed so that Christ could be born.
Yeah, can I ask you your take on another thing too? So like, it talks about like a hardened heart, and like eventually in like one of the examples it uses like continually choosing sexual immorality, but just like choosing sin over him, especially like if he's been revealed to you and then you choose to consciously turn away from him again. If you keep choosing sin over him, that eventually he'll hand you over to a hardened heart. And then Paul refers to a sealed conscience, right? Some people say that there's like no coming back from that. You have a take on that?
I think as long as you have breath in your lungs, you can repent. But
okay,
we see an example of this in the Bible with Manasseh, right? He lived a life of wickedness, idolatry, all the things involved in idolatry, which is straight up wickedness. But he repented at the end of his life, and God did accept his prayer of repentance.
I think the danger with it maybe is like the idea of the hardened heart is that you'll no longer like really be convicted. So you like,
there's a thing in Titus that talks about having a seared conscience.
Yeah.
And so, you don't want to go to the point like where you don't feel convicted anymore, or you don't feel like you don't want to get to a place where you feel like your conscience is seared and you're just running into all this destructive behavior with no second thought about it.
Yeah. And I throw that out there because, a very popular thought is like, oh, well, I'll just change later.
That's the deception. That you got more time. This is why the Bible constantly tells you, while it's called today, give your heart to God, repent while it's called today.
Yeah. So it's a dangerous game to play for many reasons. One of them being that you could get to a point where you don't even really feel conviction anymore. And you could die at any time, obviously. But okay, so what's interesting here, you made that point, right, about the heavenly realms not only being like above the firmament.
Right. So there is it's not just above the firmament. Like the idea of the heavenly realms is in the sky above you. And this is what this word powers here is often translated. And you have to like go into the Greek, and it talks about being the cosmic powers, which is a specific Greek word that describes the space between the ground and the moon. Okay. So the moon is put in the firmament above you. So that space between the ground and the moon is where these spiritual forces exist. So whenever people see all these orbs of light that they think are UFOs moving around at crazy speeds and directions in the sky, you're not seeing UFOs. Like, yes, there are crafts. We've talked about Vimanas on your channel in the past before.
Yep.
But when they see other things in the sky, there's a reason why you see other things in the sky that are.
Well, I've seen them a lot. So what do you think they are?
Oh, I think it's just a manifestation of the demonic realm, because
I've only seen them when I wasn't saved, though.
Well, you remember how like even in Austin, they have that whole ranch where people go out there and start chanting and singing to them so they appear, and then suddenly they appear.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't think I've ever seen them when I was saved. I don't know if there's correlation to that, but 100% have seen them, and they're like orbs of light, and they move freely, and they move around, and they were making patterns in the sky, and it was crazy. And you could feel that they were watching you. I don't always talk about it a lot because it makes me sound crazy, but So you think they're like entities? Yeah,
I think it's going to be the unclean spirits.
Oh, because like that's really our only options here, right? We have Azazel, and then we have like unclean spirits, and then the rest are locked up.
Right.
This is a major misconception because a lot of people get excited about the idea of like the Watchers coming back. Like, we're going to be honest, like they think it's exciting.
Right. That's why in this passage it says the devil's schemes. Right. So in this passage, it only mentions two categories. It mentions a rebellious angel whose name is Azazel. He's called the devil. He's one of the Watchers from Enoch that did not go to Tartarus, but was left out on the earth, still here after the flood, and spiritual forces of evil, which are described in both Enoch and Jubilees as the unclean spirits that are also left out under Azazel's authority. So there is an angel, one, not billions upon billions of rebellious angels. There's one left on the earth, and then there's a bunch of potentially millions upon millions of unclean spirits. So
a lot, because they had babies and babies and babies.
Yeah. Because they were trying to create their own spiritual army. Because why? Because you got to fight a bunch of spiritual angels, good angels.
Right, a lot of them. So they're outnumbered 200 to a lot.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Well, not even out. No, I mean, well, not even 200 now, right? Because they're just locked up. So.
Yeah. So that's why they were. So that's why it is a tangible thing. A spiritual being is not just a construct. This is not like philosophy where it's just some sort of like mental construct of an idea. Like
here's the question, right? Is there any capability of them bringing about like the most kind of physically dominant initial offsprings, right? Like the idea being that you have the Nephilim and then they continue to create offspring and they got a little bit smaller, and you get the Raphaim and the different types of giants and entities.
I don't think, like, if you're referring to what the government just talked about with 4 types of aliens or whatever, and people claim they see gray aliens, people claim they see like taller types of lizard aliens, other people have claimed they've seen like some kind of Nordic white-haired looking 7-foot alien or whatever. I think that's just the post-biblical genetic manipulation.
Right. So the government could just be making those things as things that could be inhabited by the disembodied spirits, potentially
like an ancient spirit yantra is what the Indians called it.
So that would make a lot of sense. Actually, that would make a lot of sense for the coming deception. Like to program us with aliens, it's just a bunch of beings and entities that they've used all this magic and genetic manipulation and pharmakia to create, and then they're just empty vessels for the disembodied spirits to take take control of, and then kind of introduce themselves as aliens.
That's what I think we're seeing here in Revelation 9 when it talks about this angel when the 5th trumpet sounds, which is 42 months before Christ returns. A star that fall from heaven, given the key to the pit of the abyss. The star opened the pit of the abyss, and the smoke rose out of it like the smoke of a great furnace. The sun and the air were darkened by the smoke. Out of the smoke, locusts descended upon the earth, and they were given power like that of the scorpions of the earth. Now, what's so interesting about this is that Apollo, one of his epithets was he was the locust god. And then it says, and then remember Nergal? Remember we talked about Nergal?
Mm-hmm.
He was considered, like, scorpions were associated with the symbolism for him.
Wow.
So they were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant of the tree, but only those who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. How do you get the seal of God on your forehead? Repent, do the commandments of God, put your faith in the Father and the Son and Jesus Christ. Like, that is how you walk with the seal of God on your forehead.
So confess, repent, and change.
Yes. Reject all the craziness in your life. Learn what God's word says, how to walk in actual power, walk in righteousness. And you can do that by putting your faith in Christ and doing the commandments. The locusts were not given power to kill, only to torment for 5 months, and their torment was like the sting of a scorpion. And in those days, men will seek death and won't find it. They'll long to die, but death will escape them. So this is what I think. This goes into a deeper conversation. I'm not going to have time to talk about all tonight, but I actually believe that there is something with the stinging tail. I don't think this is a bunch of symbolism. I think we're looking at a chimera type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the sting of the tail is going to be what causes people. It's going to be like the injection of the mark of the beast.
Wow.
Because everyone who gets the mark of the beast goes to the battle of Armageddon and gets killed. Like, it's like they don't have a choice. It's like it says like everyone robots. Who takes the marks, everyone who takes the mark will receive the wrath of the Lamb.
Yeah.
So like that's why it says you're immediately damned if you take the mark of the beast. Like, it's just,
and you don't get to just kill yourself.
And you can't die. So it's like it's almost like it's a parasite that takes you over or something, So and then it says the locust, here's where it describes the chimera stuff, right? The locust so remember, he's seeing this massive things coming up out of a pit and then descending down on the earth. And it looks like a swarm of locusts, but then as he gets a better description, he starts describing them as Horses prepared for battle.
Dude,
with
that is
something
so creepy, man. Because if he thought it looked like a swarm of locusts, there's so many of them.
that's so many of them. That's why it says 200 million later. By the way,
Bro.
Yeah.
That is
how
so
many
crazy.
movies have you seen where they depict a massive swarm of something that's invading the earth, and
Yeah. Well, so and just real fast, so like when you have like the heavenly realms, you obviously have Azazel or Azazel. So Azazel, he didn't take women as wives. He was the only one that came down on Mount Hermon, and made the oath, took the women. He's the only one that didn't. He's the only one that didn't take the women. They were all punished for that specific sin. They were put into bondage. They don't come out until they're judged. Azazel or Azazel is still out, and the prince of the air.
Yep.
And so, like, do you want to kind of break that down? Because I feel like that is a major thing that's like never ever talked about.
Yes.
It's total, yeah.
So that's why this is important, because the leader of these things that are described, like the face like a horse, faces like men, teeth like lions, hair like women. They have breastplates of iron, stingers, scorpions, tails. The leader of them is named Abaddon or Apollyon, which is the Apollo character. Okay. And remember, he comes up out of the pit. Okay. So we see in chapter 11 that this is the one who comes up out of the pit. The two witnesses have finished their testimony. The beast that comes up from the abyss will wage war with them and overpower them and kill them. Now, this doesn't say that the beast or this abyss, it calls them both the beast in this moment here. So this is why like you also know, every time you see the word beast, the first beast going forward, it's the one that came up out of the pit. So you don't have to like give it some crazy interpretation in the future. So
right. That's the one that was once here.
Yeah. Who once was, who's not now, and will be again.
Exactly.
That's the way he's described in chapter 17. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's the one whom the 10 kings of the earth give their authority to. The beast you saw, it was and now is no more. Like, so during the first century, when John's alive and seeing this vision, Apollo is in the earth already. He doesn't come back until this moment in Revelation 19.
So he knew that he existed once. He's currently locked up, but then he's going to be again because he sees the vision.
He's about to come up again and go to destruction. That's literally the name of Apollo, is destruction. And those who dwell on the earth, whose names are in the book of life, the Danish world will marvel when they see the beast that was and is not and yet will be. So they're marveling, okay, to the point where the beast that was and is not is an eighth king who belongs to the other seven and is going into destruction. Okay, the 10 kings give them their authority for a time period so they can make war against the Lamb. Okay?
Well, isn't he described as like 2/3 God? Is it one third God or 2/3 God? And he's like the mighty hunter, and like he's described as like 19 foot tall and 7 foot wide in most of them. Yeah.
Not in biblical accounts, but in ancient lore.
Yeah.
He's described in different ways like that.
But he's like a mighty hunter.
Yeah, that was his associative name for like Apollo and Gilgamesh and other aspects. They considered him the great hunter. So he's sometimes associated with the deer or Orion, the hunter.
I mean, like, extra biblical, they'll call him like a just king and a mighty hunter and partial man, partial God. So like that guy's coming
Genesis
back.
Chapter 10, when it introduces Nimrod, he's considered a hunter, a mighty hunter.
Yeah.
And this is the origins of Osiris. He was considered to be originally Nimrod. And then that's where you kind of have to go into all the mythos and the lore about how he became Osiris, which was through a lot of magic, the magic of Ra. And that's why he became a eternal. He was mortal, but then he became immortal. And that's why he comes up later and is used in the story later, because he's still alive. That's why he has to be thrown alive into the lake of fire to be killed in Revelation 19, is because he's not a normal man. Yeah. Clearly, normal men don't come up out of the pit of the earth. Yeah. So this is where we get into the dragon, which is the one who has authority over Apollo, right? And so this is where I think it's interesting that we remember the story of. So this part of Revelation is one of the biggest misconceptions in Christianity, where people think that this fight between Michael and Satan or Azazel, they think that this fight happened like before Genesis 1 or before Genesis 3. They think that this fight happened before Adam sinned. And that's just pulled from 5th century Gnosticism and stuff that's not considered scripture or sacred writing by anybody. This happens 42 months. This is a part of the fifth trumpet blast. This the same one that lets Apollyon out. This is a part of 42 months before Christ returns. This is when Michael, this is in correlation with Daniel 12:1, when Michael stands up for his people because he's sent by the Father to attack Azazel, and this word angel is agalos in the Greek, and it doesn't just mean like angels from heaven. It's also used for human messengers. It's used for human priests. It's used for pastors in the New Testament. It's also used for unclean spirits and demons, because it's just at its root core, it's a word that means messenger. Okay. So Michael and his good messengers, his good buddies from heaven, come down and fight the only rebellious angel left on the earth, which is the dragon, the devil, and Satan, the serpent, the ancient serpent, and his messengers, the unclean spirits that are the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms with him. And the dragon wasn't strong enough, and no longer was any place found in heaven for him and his angels. So this is why Satan and the unclean spirits are kicked out of their place in the sky between the earth and the moon, the heavenly realm, the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places above us. They're kicked out of that, and he's hurled to the earth, and his messengers, his angels, with him. So this is why it says, then I heard a loud voice say, woe to the earth and the sea. With great fury, the devil has come down to you, and knowing he only has a short time. He only has 42 months until Christ returns. Does this make any sense?
Yeah, this is huge, right? So like, so when
we talk about the return of the Watchers, there is a Watcher. He's actually already been here, but the return is he's actually going to be on the earth again, interacting. And that's what we see immediately in chapter 13.
Right. So he's literally called the Prince of the Air. Most people know that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like he wasn't bound up, and he's like residing up above us. And then he's thrown down to the earth. He's given 42 months. The pit is opened up. He gives his power over to the one that was, but isn't, but is to come again. The man of many names, Apollo, Abaddon in the Greek tongue. He has his second in charge, who comes out and basically gets everyone to worship him, because the dragon's now given his power over to him, and gets them all to take the mark.
That's right.
Okay.
So that's why this chapter 13 is the start of explaining to you, the dragon that we were just talking about everywhere in chapter 12, this is him. And this is why they worship the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And so therefore they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast, who can wage war against it.
Because they know that's the ultimate authority. So like, in this context, obviously he's not the actual ultimate authority. So like, then what a bunch of people always ask is like, what's the relation to this dragon and then the serpent in the garden?
Yeah, that's actually also in chapter 69 of Azazel. He's there's many different names for Satan in the Bible, right? We just went over like 4 different ones in chapter 12 and 13 of Revelation. But in 1 Enoch 69, Gadriel is the name also of the angel spoken of that deceived Eve in the garden, that is attributed to Azazel. So like in the book of 1 Enoch, there's 2 different names used for Satan, 3 different technically: the word Satan, the word Azazel, and the word Gadriel. In the book of Jubilees, the word the devil, the word the Satan, and the word Mastema is used for Azazel. So there's multiple words throughout Scripture used for this Satan character, this Azazel.
And Satan, Satan, meaning opposition, but it's like the opposition, like the adversary. So like the top guy. So then like,
and so you see the word Gadriel that's used in 1 Enoch 69 that says he's the one that deceived Eve in the garden. You see that in Isaiah chapter 65. It's the god Gad that they were worshiping, the god of fortune and fate. He was another epithet for Baal or for Ra or for Zeus.
Okay, so that's what's crazy is I've heard that the GAD is pronounced God, and I've heard. I don't know if that's true.
It's a phonetic construct. I mean, it depends on like the transliteration from the Hebrew word Elohim into the English word God. You know.
You'd
have to look at the etymology of like the word God in English and how it got translated from Elohim.
Yeah, you just know like GAD, of course, being like the Babylonian deity for fortune and luck.
Right.
because when you get into the whole, like, they wanted to know how to pronounce the oath, right? So like obviously it's like what you say and how you say it is super important.
Can be. Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
I would say like intention would have to be in there somewhere.
Yeah. God doesn't, you're not just anyone that studies even at a cursory level. If you study any type of magic, they'll always say your intention, your passion, your desire all matters. A spell will not work if you're just like playing around. Right. You have to actually believe it.
They can't trick you into just mispronouncing something and then you're like, but it is still interesting, right? Because like, it's on the back of the dollar and everyone uses the word God a lot. But so like the part here where like was going to ask real fast, like, so do you agree that Azazel is a seraphim?
That's not stated in scripture. It's possible, but it's just not stated.
So where do people get that?
A bunch of Christian lore throughout the years, just like they think that Revelation 12 happened back in Genesis 1 and 2, you know, just like that, just like Christians try to read the heliocentric model into the scriptures.
Yeah. Because like, I guess because seraph means like serpent. If you look at the root words, you get like serpent or fiery serpent and all this stuff.
Yeah. Ophanim is a class of angel that carries the throne of God, and its root word means wheel. And because the glory around them spins, it looks like it's spinning like a whirlwind of fire spinning around them, but they're not literally a wheel. They're an actual angel.
So then this whole idea, which I don't believe this, but I've heard it brought up a lot. So this whole idea of like the seed war, and then Eve had 2 children, and one of them was with the serpent, all that, right? This would be directly refuted with the fact that Azazel wasn't even punished for taking women. If he took the first woman ever, then he would have been punished, right? So we can just do away with this idea that like Cain and the serpent seed comes from Eve. Okay, just wanted to address that because it is always brought up without fail every time that we talk.
Yeah, and even if that were true, and somehow God was unjust and didn't punish him like he did some Yaza, then all that serpent seed didn't make it through the flood. It would have been destroyed. The whole serpent seed theory, even to get through the flood, they depend on assuming there's a recessive gene within one of Noah's children, and they can't even explain how that happens. They just have to assume that in there. So yeah, the serpent seed has 105 different problems with it, and all of it can be refuted with the Book of Enoch and Jubilees in like 2 seconds. So
yeah, I think that there's a seed war of sorts. And that they mess with the genetics. You know what I mean? Like
there is a genetic manipulation war that happens. That's been happening it's a part of the pharmakia and the sorcery. It's always been a part of sorcery. But the terminology for seed is not always about genetics when it's used in scripture. It's often used for the heart of a person. So like Jesus talked about, you claim that you're the children of Abraham, but you don't do the deeds of Abraham. And so therefore, like in Romans 4, talking about being of the faith of Abraham, from whom the seed of promise came.
Yeah.
Okay. So the word seed is like a synonym for a person's life.
For sure. Because even in Galatians, right?
Yeah.
We inherit the seed of Abraham.
Yeah. Yeah. So the seed is not always specifically talking about, sperm or offspring or DNA
physical genetic.
It's also related to, like, for example, in the Book of Jubilees, it talks about when the kingdom comes, there will no longer be the seed of the Canaanite in the world, right? Well, it just finished explaining to you how the Canaanites were wicked and rebelling against God, right? But yet at the same time, we see a Syrophoenician lady in the Gospels who's a Canaanite getting healed by Jesus.
Yeah.
And having faith. And he commends her and says, I have not found such great faith even in all of Israel.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not about being cursed because you've been born into a certain genetic line.
Yeah.
Like you can repent.
I totally agree with that. I don't want to open this topic up too much because it's already late, right? But like I am curious about is there any like physical measures taken to ensure the Messiah is born to a specific lineage, or like a lineage, like a protection measure for that lineage? Does that make sense?
Yeah. The Father, through his Holy Spirit, encouraged priests and prophets throughout the generations to call the people of Israel to righteousness, and out of righteous people at the time, like Galatians 4:4 says, like at the appointed time, the fullness of time, he came to two righteous people, Joseph and Mary, both called very righteous in Scripture, and impregnated Mary. That's how he ensured that his son would be born. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, you at least needed a Mary at that point, is all I'm saying, right? Like you needed.
Yeah. And like in that same chapter, it says that John the Baptist's parents, Zacharias and Elizabeth, were super righteous, doing all the commandments of God, and were considered blameless, meaning they were very, very faithful to God's ways. So he could have chose them if he wanted to, but he wanted to choose. They were Levites, so he had to choose Joseph and Mary because they're of the tribe of Judah, because that was the promise for Christ to come from the tribe of Judah. So
okay, so like one thing that like I just definitely know that a lot of people didn't like have probably not heard, right, is this idea that Satan is up in the sky above us, right, and he resides there, he wants to reside there, and then so basically like the people of earth got fed up with him, and then he's like, okay, I'm gonna pop back up.
So this isn't a show that we did here. Let me try to put this on. If you put this on screen, let me put this on screen real quick. So if anyone wants to go watch this show in the future, it is part of our 42 series, and I review this ancient Egyptian text that talks about this. Okay, so just give me 1 second.
Yeah, the whole meta here is just crazy, which is like these people weren't crazy people making up fairy tale mythos. Like they were just, their life was insane, and they were writing like about actual beings that were showing them actual secrets and magic and building incredible architecture and teaching them all kinds of like, you know, incantations and effectively magic, and they were worshiping as gods.
Yes. Yeah, and this starts at the Tower of Babel going forward. Well, before the Tower of Babel, that's what led them to the rebellion of the Tower of Babel, was they were picking up the ways of the watchers from before the flood, and Jubilees chapter 8 explains this. So, but this particular series here is 42 series. We go into a lot of deep dive and things like this, and part 20 is where we discuss this book that's been, you know, scholarship, archaeological scholarship, and Egyptologists affirm that this is a real book from ancient Egypt. They date it back to the 18th century BC. It's called the Book of the Heavenly Cow. And in this book, it says that Satan was living on the earth amongst mankind, but then mankind rebelled against him, and he wanted to go live in the sky above, and he had a home built for him in the sky attached to the firmament so that it would stay up there. And that is what's called the Eye of Ra.
And so how does it move?
I would imagine that he's got advanced tech, right? So I imagine just like the Vimana's moved, right? I would imagine. Some people would suggest, you know, there's a sense of, you know, manipulation of the static electric voltage. Some people would suggest it's
like it's moving, like you mean moving along the firmament.
Other people believe this literally is the Soros cycle. Oh. This is what creates eclipses.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't know this, but at the crucifixion of Christ, there was a 3-hour eclipse.
Mm-hmm.
But this is impossible according to the biblical record. Because the biblical record on Passover, when Christ died, the moon is on the opposite side of the sky as the sun.
Okay, yeah, it's a trip. So
what covered the, like, so all the historians that talk about there was a unusual eclipse of the sun for 3 hours.
It's like recorded in China.
It's recorded in a multitude of places in the 1st and 2nd century they all talk about it being when Jesus was crucified, like it was well known there was a strange 3-hour eclipse of the sun, and the moon was on the opposite side of the sky, so they know it wasn't the moon.
So what do you think, he just was pissed or something? You know, and he's like, I'm gonna block out the sun.
Yeah, I think that is the source cycle. I think that history, not just from the Egyptians, but also as we just read from Revelation 12, Satan literally made his home in the sky, in the heavenly realm between the earth and the moon. That's where he wanted to get away from mankind. That's literally where his abode is. And then there's a time in the future where God is going to send one of his most powerful angels down to literally kick Satan out of his. That's so it says there was no place found for him in heaven anymore. So he's sent down to the earth.
Yeah.
We all like this assumes this whole story, Austin. It just assumes that these things are real. Okay, so like it assumes that Michael's a real person that you could talk to, and Jesus Christ himself. It says when he was resurrected, he became a life-giving spirit. So he's no longer like the dirt flesh that we have. He's now has a glorified body that's called a spiritual body. But yet he can be touched by Thomas. He can make breakfast at the side of the lake that morning that Peter jumps off the boat and swims to him. Like he can interact with us physically just like angels can. He has a real body. It's a really tangible. It's just a different level of physics that we don't understand, right? It's not made of dirt. It's made of water. And this is what spiritual bodies are made out of. And so that's why they can just disappear and reappear. And like they have, it's like a higher capability. And I imagine, because water holds memory. So like, there's all kinds of studies on water and how advanced it is. It can't be destroyed and all this stuff.
Can't even understand it. Harvard can't even understand the different types of water.
It's fascinating stuff. So the people don't like the big question people in church never ask is like, where actually is Satan right now? Where did he go? Where is he? Like, okay, he's a real character.
People just assume he's like underneath us in fire or something.
Yeah, they assume he's in the ground, or they assume like he's just, I guess, just like that old Denzel Washington movie called Fallen, where the demons just like jumping from person to person. They think he's just like constantly like jumping from inhabitant possession.
Well, this is what's such a crazy thing about the modern like churchianity thing. It's like such a deception. Like they actually somehow have pulled off people not even asking that question. Really, right? It's like heaven's just an idea. They don't even think about heaven as a place, so they don't really think about even the characters or beings as like these real things. So they're completely detached away from like the reality of like this spiritual war. There's like literal a place above us. There's a place below us. There's like, that's like kind of the big deception, right? I mean,
so this is what we talk about in our 42 series, the video right before Babylon has fallen, right before we talk about the prophecy of Michael kicking Satan out of the sky, forcing him to stay on the earth for 42 months before Christ returns. We talk about how Revelation, what I believe they're going to do is the world already worships the dragon, right? Secretly, the occult, right? They already worship the Satan and Osiris and all those guys. They know who they are, the ancient gods of Egypt. They know who they are. That's why it's called the occult. It's hidden, right? Their reverence and worship of him is hidden.
Well, they know. Do you think they know they're like literally like there's the creator and that's Satan, or do you think they just think that the Egyptian gods are real and they worship them?
Well, I think it might be who you ask. I've heard people talk about supposed leaked testimony from high level military people, and they're like, oh, the ancient Chaldean gods are real. We've interacted with them. They're gonna reveal themselves again to mankind in the future. It's a single testimony that supposedly was leaked. It's true. That's what the Bible says. It's true, but like I can't verify that. And I can't tell you like each person at different levels of government and what they know. But at the same time, what the average person doesn't like think, where is actually Satan hanging out right now? Where is he actually like, he's not just like, it's not like a movie. He's not constantly just disappearing and reappearing over here. And it's like in the ancient world, they knew that what the Hebrews called Satan, they had a name for it. It was Ra. And he sometimes would come down to the ground and interact with people and impress the people to continue worship him, and then he would go back to his home in the sky. They claimed he lived in the boat of 1,000,000 years that flew through the sky. Right? The Greeks said that Zeus would sometimes appear on the earth to man, and then other times he'd go back to his home in the sky, Mount Olympus. Right? So like this is the same story in all Brahma and to the Indians, the Satan Zeus character for the Indians. He would live in his palace was like a large lotus-shaped palace in the sky, right? Like a big lotus-shaped Vimana. They all believe that the head deity, which was always attributed to a serpent, the first avatar of Zeus was a serpent, by the way, in ancient Greece, that he was always in the sky, and that's what they believed. So we have these prophecies here of at a certain time he's going to get kicked out of the sky, but in our 42 series, we talk about my theory, this is just my theory, what they're going to do with this whole alien disclosure is they're going to have probably 30 to 50 years, if not longer, of reintroducing the world to the Zeus character, to the Ra character, they're going to say he's our alien progenitor, come back to the planet to visit us. Yeah. He's still going to be in the sky, and they'll probably take dignitaries and to see his home and this is his ship that's hovering in the sky. and get the world acquainted with interacting with a superior intelligent being in the sky.
Who claims to have made everything, basically. So then when he's kicked down, that's when he's like, immediately he's like, okay, he gives his power over. Now,
Well,
obviously the angel has to open up the pit.
That's when the gig is up, right? So I believe that his home is going to be destroyed. That's why I chose the term Babylon has fallen. That's what Revelation 18 actually says. Like a millstone, Babylon will be thrown down. That's right. True. So if you look at a millstone, it looks like the depictions of the ancient Eye of Ra.
Throw it down where, like in the ocean or something? You think?
Yeah, it's potential. I mean, it says that there's one of the plagues, one of the destructive events that happens during the last 42 months, is that a third of the fish in the ocean are destroyed or killed.
That would make the most sense to put it there, I guess.
Yeah. So basically, if his ship, what they're calling his ship, if there would play it off, right? There would obviously be media spin, right? So Michael comes and does what the Bible says, but the world is not going to be like, oh, God just judged this false rebellious angel and the gig's up and now he's turned down to here and everyone's running for their life. No. They're going to be like, oh, his ship fell out of the sky, it broke, and he's got to live down here among us. But meanwhile, Apollyon's been let out. And now he's like, look, I can't be down here amongst you guys because y'all are all crazy, believing in different things and killing each other. I need everybody to be on board with one form of worship.
Yeah.
Worship my boy Apollyon, and we'll all be good. And then he's going to have enforcement agents that are brought out to attack the nations to try to get them.
Where does he go at that point? He can't go back up there.
Well, that's why he's still on the ground when Christ returns, and Christ wraps him up with the chain. Well, I don't know where he's going to be or what he's going to say, but he's powerless against the true power of Christ and the angels of heaven, so he's going to lose the battle. I personally think Zephaniah 3:14 is a prophecy about Christ killing the first beast or slicing up the first beast. Talks about him slicing from thigh to neck the head of the house of evil when he returns. So remember, Christ comes back, just absolute carnage mode. You know what I mean? So yeah. It's not the gentle lamb coming back.
Yeah.
So yeah, clearly, just as in Michael seems to be the angel that's always like showing dominance over Azazel. He's also in Revelation 20 verse 1. He's the one that wraps Azazel in the chain and throws him in a hole for 1,000 years. And First Enoch chapter 56 also talks about Enoch sees the chains being made that's going to wrap up Azazel and throw him down in the pit for 1,000 years.
1,000 years. So
then that's how there's first and second beast are destroyed. All the armies that tried to fight Christ is coming are killed. All the unclean spirits are destroyed in the lake of fire. Satan's wrapped up, thrown in the hole in the ground for 1,000 years. That's how there's peace on the earth. And Christ is on the earth teaching mankind how to live in peace with each other.
Yeah, the new Jerusalem, millennial reign. Torah is being practiced.
Yeah, all the wisdom of God is being shared with the nations and enforced. That's why it
says but the Torah was just gone in the middle.
That's right, yeah. But, just done away with for the church, who's supposed to be the ultimate example of God.
Yeah,
He's supposed to have more knowledge because they've seen.
You're going to have to go back and do it. But,
brother, I really appreciate this conversation, but I got to jump.
No, yeah, you're good. We're way over. Thank you, man. Go follow Sean on YouTube, Kingdom of Context.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, much love, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. I'll see you later.
All right, later, bro. That dude is a legend, man. So yeah, I thought it would be cool to talk on that topic because like for one, like before I heard him break that down, I had no idea. Like this idea that like because there's like this misconception, right, that the fallen angels are basically going to come back, but it says that they can't. But if you think about it, it's really not needed to like deceive the world, you know? Kind of summary is a lot of this stuff may sound crazy, right? But if you actually look into it, overwhelming evidence of demigods, claims of demigods, and claims of giants, right? And there are claims of hybrids. And this is across the entire world by civilizations that had no relation to each other at all. So like we're separated by thousands of miles, separated by hundreds of years or thousands of years, no relation to each other. making the same claims. And then there are all these different civilizations claiming the same stories of the same beings with different names, but same characteristics. And there's the same storyline, and it's all over the place. And you have the most powerful, rich, successful people, wealthiest, like most powerful bloodlines, all worshiping these deities and treating them as though they're real. And like, how does that make any sense? And so, like, on the one hand, you can just believe like all this pseudoscientific, like normie, mainstream stuff that they feed you, which doesn't even make any sense. And in reality, if you zoom all the way out and wipe the slate clean, like those stories are crazy too. Like tons and tons of, insane dinosaurs over hundreds of millions of years and all this, right? Like, bro, like you believe like abiogenesis somehow happened and rocks turned into humans, and then this was after a whole bunch of crazy dinosaurs lived over hundreds of millions of years. What seems to really have happened, right, of course, was that there were tons of giant remains. They swooped in, the Royal Society swooped them up, gave you a cover story of dinosaurs, and that they took these giant remains. They do all kinds of incantations and occultic rituals with the giant remains, kind of worshiping Baal, and they're hoping to bring back these spirits, or they using incantations and enchantments to bring back the spirits of the giants and try to get them to worship or get them to possess them, and then they get power that way, right? This is way more real than people realize. Like, this is totally a spiritual realm. You can go further and further and further down into this when you get into like Saturn. What is Saturn? You get into the black cube, worshiping the black cube. What do all Muslims do? They go worship like the black cube. You keep falling down this rabbit hole and you realize, like, basically, the enemy doesn't really care what you believe as long as it's not the truth, and you can believe any iteration of it that you would like. And these entities are going to kind of reveal themselves, right? And who knows? Is it like crazy AI robots that, the spirits inhabit? I don't know. Or is it crazy like genetic abominations and hybrids and stuff that they inhabit? Who knows? What do they look like when they come up out of the bottomless pit? Who knows? But I thought it was cool to have Sean on, because Sean has obviously devoted many, many, many years to studying this in depth. And, yeah, he really kind of gives you a new perspective and breaks it down, and it makes it all gel together because he puts everything in context.